How's this offseason been compared to the season before?
It's been a little bit of a wild ride. All off seasons are challenging in one way or another, but we feel good about where we've ended up, and we're excited about this season.
Last time we saw you, it was for the press conference for a new head coach, which is so rare to happen this late in the game as you get ready for the draft. How has that affected you guys' philosophy in terms of drafting? Has it affected it at all?
The philosophy hasn't changed. It's just been meeting more with Todd now as the head coach, more one-on-one and more in some group settings too. Bruce has still been involved. He's been in our meetings. I meet with Bruce, periodically, and he's going to be involved here as we put the final touches on our draft too. So our philosophy hasn't changed. We still want to bring in really good players.
And what have you learned about Coach Bowles since you've had more of these meetings with him, these one-on-one meetings, and as you've seen him now in assuming a head coaching role?
Well, I've always had a really good relationship with Todd going back to our Arizona season together. But, he's just got a lot of insight, never really talked about offensive players in terms of adding them to our team. It's always been talking about defensive players with him. And it's been great to get his insight as a defensive expert on offensive players.
Jason, of the unsigned free agents, guys like Gronk and Sue, there's obviously been mutual interest, but no signing. How much would you like or need to have some resolution to those unanswered questions before the draft?
Well, it's always fluid, adding players to our roster. It doesn't have to be during free agency. Right now we're focused on the draft. There's a lot of time between after the draft and when the season starts. So it's always fluid and, leave the door open on a lot of cases, whether they're, ex-Bucs or have been with us or, players that are on the street. So we'll just always keep, doors open, and we'll always keep constant communication about that.
Jason, while you'd like to have Sue and Gronk back, if that doesn't happen before the draft, do you have to operate in the assumption that maybe those guys don't come back and you can't wait on them? If you have to fill some needs and the right players at those positions are there?
Well, you have to keep that in mind, but you also never really want to push a need or a perceived need too high up, and that's where you start making mistakes.
Jason, you've made a lot of trades throughout your 10 years as GM, one every year, in fact, 13 total. Have you started the process of maybe calling other teams and feeling out, maybe moving out, moving back?
That process usually doesn't start until the week of, usually even a couple days before. You put some feelers out here and there if you run into, your colleagues at the owners' meetings, what have you, that you'd be interested. But right now, sitting at 27, you don't know what players are going to come down yet. You don't know if you're going to be in a position that you're going to want to move up or really move back yet. So you start having those conversations next week, usually just, playing the game of the what ifs.
What's your overall thoughts on the draft as a whole?
As you start diving in and doing more and more work as we have in the last couple months, you start to get more and more excited about it. That happens every year with the draft. Initially, you think, well, maybe it's not going to be as strong, but it does look like a draft that's going to be, there's going to be some good players in the mid-rounds, for sure. Maybe not, there may not be 30 guys that you think are legit first-round picks, but there's going to be a lot of good players in the middle rounds.
You're picking 27th. There's a good chance that you're still going to have people on your board above that. Do you trust your board and take the highest, or is that when you start to look for need among those players?
You have to trust your board, and you can't push players, like I said before, of a perceived need too high just because you need that position. Otherwise, they're going to trump other really good players at different positions. We could take a player literally just about any position on our team, and I think if they're a great player, we're going to be happy we did it. So it's a delicate balance of wanting to win now and also looking into the future. But as a general manager, my staff, we have to have our eye on the future a little bit too. So, but we obviously want a player that's going to come in and impact us and have a good year and help us win a Super Bowl this year. But you just never know until you get the player in the building. You can do all the work you want. You just never really know how it's going to work out.
Did things kind of change for you though, philosophically? Eye towards the future, totally on when Tom was essentially retired, and then 40 days later, when all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, we're in win now mode again. Did that kind of change things for you at all in the draft in terms of approach?
I'm not sure if it changed as drastically as what you're insinuating. It changed maybe a little bit of how we went about free agency. And, we had a lot of players that we wanted to bring back, which we were successful in doing. With the draft, I'll be sitting here next year talking about it. If we still try to take and force a need, we'll be wishing that we would have drafted a different player if we didn't respect our board. Now, we do have our board prepared for need and for best player. So I say it every year, you want it where they collide, and you got the best player at a perceived need.
Jason, I'm just curious. I know that you guys, you bounce things off of Tom when it's free agents or offensive, players coming in. Do you even go over any of the wide receivers or anything like that with Tom, or does he stay away from the draft?
No, he stays away. He trusts us. That's just not in his nature anyway. So.
Can we talk about some of those perceived needs? Defensive tackle, you want to get younger there, I would assume, right? Can you just talk about where you sit with the defensive tackle position as it stands right now without Sue?
Well, we obviously think very highly of Vita, Will. We think Nacho's a very good player. Excuse me. And we've got some good young guys that we've had in here that we feel pretty good about, have a chance to ascend and get better. So, yeah, you always want to upgrade your trenches. It's a position that we'll continue to look for, but we've had the draft. We have a period after the draft. There's still trade deadlines not for months and months away. So there's different avenues and different paths that we can take to upgrade there and upgrade our depth and get more players in there.
How surprised were you of Ali Marquette's retirement, and does that affect your draft choices at all?
First of all, very happy for Ali. Had an unbelievable career, and we all have the utmost respect for him, and I'm glad that he staying in the community here, and he's always going to be welcome here. Initially, I don't want to say shocked, but initially a little surprised. But now knowing Ali and the conversations we've had, and certainly understand and respect his decision, and it did a little bit. That's why we went and traded for Shaq Mason, and we feel really good about Aaron Stinney having that playoff experience that he had when we won the Super Bowl, and Nick Leverett and Robert Hainsey, and we've got some good players that we thought had been doing some good things early on in their career there, that there's going to be a lot of competition. But it did initially, and I think the first step was trading for Shaq.
Jason, with re-signing Leonard Fournette, you obviously get your top guy back, but would that prevent you from drafting a running back in this year's draft, or maybe it changes the style of running back you're looking for? What's your overall outlook of the running back room?
Well, obviously it was getting Leonard back was great. Anytime you can have a 3-down back on your roster poses challenges for a defense. We felt like Keyshawn took some big steps last year, and we gained a lot of confidence with him. And then with Gio, good change of pace back, good hands, got some value in the return game as well. But no, it would not stop us from taking it back.
Jason, looking back over all the drafts you've been involved with, is there a memory kind of that sticks out to you about maybe behind the scenes dealings that were pretty comical?
Comical? The year that we took Vita and we traded back, you could hear a pin drop in the draft room with crossing fingers that Vita was going to last until 12. And once he did, the place kind of erupted a little bit. So it was that's one that I'll never forget.
Jason, speaking of defensive tackles, the last couple of years, I know there's 2 or 3 guys that are well regarded this year, but there's not a lot of depth at the defensive tackle position. Has there been something in the college landscape that's changed to maybe kind of stunt the growth of some of these tackles, whether it's the RPO game, the quick wide receiver screens that aren't allowing these guys to put up sack numbers like they used to and become more well-rounded?
There's a lot of different theories to that. One of them may be that these big, long, athletic guys became offensive tackles. So, you're seeing a little bit of a stunt of growth in that position over the last couple of years, and I'm hoping that that reverses here in the next few years.
How would you
Jason,
assess
would-
this year's tight end class in the draft versus previous years?
I'd say it's pretty solid. There's some good players. There's never as many tight ends as there are receivers or running backs or offensive linemen, but I would say it's pretty solid.
You mentioned that there's a lot of depth in the mid-rounds. Is that somewhere you'd be trying to move back? Obviously, you're not picking from 133 to 241. Is that something you'd be, looking to try to get back in there? And then also with Brady back in the imposed window, would you be interested in trading future picks? Not something you've routinely done.
It just depends on how the board is going to fall. It depends on how the flow goes during the day, whether it's day 1, 2, or 3. It depends on what players are left on the board. It's always something I always had a thought of trading for picks for next year. Just hasn't really worked out that way because there's been players that we've liked. So, I'll say it every year. You guys probably get sick of me saying it. All options are on the table right now.
Looking at your depth chart, Jason, right now, is it realistic to think a rookie can come in and earn a starting job on the 22 Buccaneers?
You just never know. I think there are players in the draft that certainly have the ability and the talent and the capability of it. We've got a lot of good players on our team, so it'll be good competition at a lot of spots.
Jason, how is it going to be different in the war room with Todd Bowles and you? And will Bruce be in there as well?
Yeah, Bruce. I'll have Bruce in there. It'll be, we get most of our work, 98% of it, done before the draft starts. So we kind of know what's going to happen. Well, we know what we will do in all scenarios. So it'll be no different.
Jason, you had Devontae Wyatt and Logan Ryan in here for top 30 visits. What do you see out of them as players?
I'm sorry, say that.
Devontae Wyatt and Logan Hall in here for top 30 visits. What have you seen out of those players?
They're good players. You hear about them a lot in the media, and there's a reason why. They're good football players. They're at a premium position. We had good visits with them. We had a lot of good players in here for the visits, so they were two of them.
Jason, a year ago, you had some injuries to the wide receiver position, and Chris, we're not sure exactly when he'll be ready, hopefully week 1. Mike's entering his 9th season. With Tom back just for 1 year, isn't that a position you want to start, to refortify again at some point, maybe even this year?
Yeah, of course, you've seen the premium this offseason, what teams are putting on receivers, and we brought in Russell Gage, and we're excited, but Russell can add to our team. We've had some pretty good success with receivers here, developing them, taking the right ones, and that's a tribute to our staffs working together there. So, and the coaching, obviously. So, it's always a position that you'll look at.
Jason, there's been a lot of chatter about Tom joining the Miami Dolphins next year as a part owner. Given that it's out there, has there been any effort on the organization's part to maybe offer Tom something to kind of seal him with you guys for the future?
No, we haven't had those discussions. So all the only discussions I've had that we've had with Tom is when he came back, and we're excited about this year, and we're excited to get going.
What do you make of all that chatter? I asked you a similar question about the reports about the perceived friction between Bruce and Tom, but what do you make about all those rumors about him, possibly joining the Dolphins with Sean Payton and taking an ownership role with them? What do you make of all that?
I make of it as chatter, just like you said. So we're focused on putting our team together here with the draft, and we're all excited. We're all in lockstep here. Tom, Todd, myself, Byron, entire coaching staff on this season.
And how would you
expect
assess
him
where
for
you're at
off-season?
edge? How would you assess where you're at currently at edge? Obviously, Jason Pierre-Paul, you didn't re-sign him. I know Joe Tryon did a lot of great things last year, but still kind of growing into his role. How would you kind of assess where you guys are at?
Well, we love Joe. We love Shaq, Anthony Nelson, Cam Gill. We've got some good players there.
When do you expect Tom in for off-season workouts? Have you had those discussions?
Constant communication he and Todd have had on that. It's voluntary right now. He's going into his 23rd season. He obviously knows how to take care of himself, and during this voluntary portion, I just know he and Todd have had several conversations about that. So no worries whatsoever.
Jason, 2 years ago, you had such a big impact from the draft with Wirfs and Winfield stepping in as starters right away, and then last year, with so much back, didn't really even need for rookie impact. Where do you think this draft will fall between the two?
I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you, but I think we can get some contributors, and I think there's a shot that we can get some players that can push to start. So I felt last year, we got 2 linebackers late, KJ and Grant, late in the draft that did great things for us on special teams. Just because they didn't play on defense didn't mean that they were wasted picks. So, and we're excited about where Kyle's at in the process right now too. So I think it's, it could go either way. It depends on what position you're taking. If we're taking a position where we have a veteran, a very good Pro Bowl caliber player, it's going to take a little time.
You mentioned when you look at on for players as they potentially return or don't return. Are you approaching the draft as if Gronkowski won't be back? Is that something that's in play in your big board?
Well, no, you have to pay attention to that position. But like I said before, you don't want to push a player up just because, like right now, at this very moment, it looks like a perceived need. So you want to take him at the right spot.
Jason, I assume you might not be drafting a quarterback early, in the first round anyway. But in honest, when you look at quarterbacks every year, what's happened to that position? I mean, I know there will be overdrafted, there will be guys that go in the first round. But in general, are you surprised there aren't more guys coming out late that are like NFL ready or can't miss top field round, top of the first round guys?
Well, I think it depends. I don't think you see that every year. I think you go through a year or two, maybe longer, of where you have a little bit of a lesser talent pool at that position. I think it can change from year to year. I think a lot of the styles of offense that they're playing in college differ from where an NFL team's looking for quarterbacks are currently running their style or their scheme. So I think there's a lot of factors at play there. But then, you never know. You could have multiple drafted in the first round. You see what teams are willing to give up to bring a quarterback in. So it's a very premium position. It's the most important position on the team.
Do you see the USFL as being a benefit for you guys right now that maybe, that could be an addition to the draft? Do you see some guys that are producing out there?
I think it would be. I think it'd be great to have, our eyes on, we always say it's the most important thing is the tape. So it gives us more tape to watch and another avenue to bring players in.
So the fact you took over as general manager in 2014, what has been maybe the biggest change from either a philosophical standpoint or a methodology standpoint as general manager when you look at the scouting process?
I would say that, and it's something I think every first-time general manager goes through. You get here a lot of different avenues, but I got here through the scouting side. Felt like I could maybe put too much on my own plate instead of trusting the staff around you and hearing what everybody has to say and make it more of a collaborative effort. And I feel like once I had that staff in place and had people here that I truly trust, which is too many to name right now, that the process became a lot smoother.
Jason, right now it looks like there's not going to be that 2, 3, or 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 15. Does that help or hurt you picking down the draft? You're hearing that, I guess, through the media, but I assume that you haven't talked to the other 31 general managers. Just 30.
Yeah, okay, just 30. Like I said, we have to prepare for every scenario, so.
Jason, you mentioned come draft day, you're 98%. 98% of the work's been done. We're obviously 9 days out. Today, and just based on these last few years that you have drafted, 9 days away, what percentage are you at prior to your 98% preparation, or is it always expect the unexpected?
Well, there's a lot of that, but I would say I'd put a number on it. We're pretty close. We still have some medical meetings to go through. We still have some, some extra meetings just to tweak the big board here and there. So I'd say we're probably at 90.
Jason, I suppose you're approaching pick number 27, and you got 3 guys that are very close on your board, different positions. And Todd, you asked Todd, and he says he has a preference for one of those 3. Would you be inclined to go with Bowles at that point if those 3 guys are pretty close in your mind?
Yes, but to answer your question, we'll talk it out. We're talking through all of that right now, and we've done a lot of that right now. And Todd and I have, just like Bruce and I have a very good relationship where we can say whatever we want to each other in the room about, you're crazy, this should be this guy or whatever. And we'll watch it again, and we'll look at it, and we'll talk it out, and we'll get that all sorted out before, we go into the room on Thursday.
But he has weight in that room.
Yeah, absolutely. The head coach always has weight in that room. I will never want to draft a player that a coach absolutely does not want. So it puts the player in an unfair position, but it also puts the coach in an unfair position too. So,
Can you describe what it's like when you guys are on the clock and, as you say, as Ira was saying, you might have 2 or 3 guys right there that, a fine line separates the two. That
we already have it.
You're set.
We already have it.
Your hand, then.
There's no fights in the draft room. That's what I want to avoid.
Can you assess your defensive backfield right now as it stands? Obviously, you guys face a lot of really, really good quarterbacks this next year. Where would you say your roster is in that department?
Well, we're healthy. So right now we're healthy. So we want to plan to keep it that way. And we had a lot of these young guys play very well 2 years ago when we won the Super Bowl. And I don't think that talent just went away. So we're healthy now. We've added players like Logan Ryan, Keanu Neal, that we're excited about, bringing some veteran leadership back there. And I think we're in good shape.
Would Neal's presence preclude you from still possibly looking at a safety? I know he's had a history of some injuries. I also know that he's played more of a hybrid role in recent years, more as a linebacker. Would that preclude you from possibly grabbing a safety in the draft?
No.
Everybody's all in, right, this year. Tom's back. It's, we know what the stakes are, you do. How does that not affect your draft in terms of the early rounds? I mean, you always want to draft a guy in the first round that's going to come in and play and help you right away. Isn't there more of a premium on that, considering what you're going for this year?
Yeah, but there are no guarantees on any of these players. There's no guarantee that, it's a 50%, so there's no guarantee. You want to make sure that that you're doing all the work that you can. I love information at this point. Managing risk, I think you and I have talked about that in the past, and bringing in a player that you have as much confidence as possible in. So there's no guarantee that a player is going to come in and be defensive rookie of the year or offensive rookie of the year.
You talk about perceived needs, and obviously perception doesn't always line up well with reality. Is there a position that people see as a perceived need for this team that you don't think is one?
No, I didn't mean it like that. There could be plans at certain positions that haven't really come about yet. There could be some things that we're thinking about doing at some point, but so I just use the word perceived. It's everybody's got an opinion, so there's a lot of opinions out there on every team.
Jason, last season, obviously a completely different scenario with COVID, opt-outs, everything, kind of back into the normal swing of things. What have you adopted from that? Obviously Zoom meetings, but what have you adopted? How have you changed your draft approach and style coming back to a normal season, normal draft, normal offseason?
Well, you said it though. Zoom. We take advantage of that. So we all have our 30 visits. Our scouts and coaches are out working out players and pro days and stuff. But we do a lot of Zooms, and we've gotten a lot out of those Zooms.
Jason, can you describe what draft night is like for you when you're picking so low down, late in the 20s? Kind of waiting for that. It could be 4 hours before you're on the clock, but is there a lot of discussion going on, or is there a lot of phone calls with other teams at that point, or is it sitting and waiting?
Just mostly sitting and waiting. And eating, unfortunately.
A little different though, getting to be able to do it in your building versus being at home.
Yeah, it was great getting back here last year. Yeah, I miss the kids. Maybe next year I'll have them in the draft room.
Yeah, I'm just saying, have them in there.
Anything else? Thanks, Jason.
Appreciate it.